And, yeah,
As a world.
Right.
my mom died, we figured out that.
Yeah, darling, they've never done.
And blah, 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 and I'm gonna go.
No, that's why I commend you on the outside.
And Mark is like.
It's very, they're very.
I know,
There's moments where
I had no problem with me, and I wasn't even trying.
Kids
To ask those questions.
Right?
If they feel the urge
They're
to
part
share,
of
or
the
they
team,
want
not
to
the
share, sure, but I'm not gonna be as.
All about it.
People I'm working with. And,
The arts can really teach. folks.
but it's just,
So,
okay. And then, she would then be able to just move on. Okay, so when I get down to Linfield, I need to look at the housing budget and I'll
Let me do that for you.
just changed up and I'm just sitting here like,
I know, I'm just saying.
your dad told your mom. Okay, cool. I mean, I guess if you're gonna pivot, I'll pivot with you, but it's like, yeah, it's like, but, well, okay then.
Yeah, I mean, timing is also,
I mean,
when, whether it's you've already dealt with it, you don't need to deal with it. Or you're not ready.
well, and the thing is, I think sometimes people don't believe when we say people, humans are resilient. I think there's a, no, they aren't, they're having all these troubles, but no, they really aren't. Yes, they might need to deal with the trauma they have in their hands. However, they are resilient. They do bounce back to some degree.
I heard a statement by a psychologist the other day, and he was saying, he's like, resiliency. Evolve, and I mean,
Yeah,
we're all going through life on like a daily basis, and of course, we're all.
Hopefully we're learning and growing in the process.
Hopefully.
yeah, and I completely agree. I actually resiliency and being resilient, that is a norm. It really is. Because we all have to find ways to move forward, however that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Emphasize psychological term,
Um,
because we've been using it at the part of our students, on teaching people emotional balance. And express.
You said
And what you
twice.
said, oh, and that.
and we do words now like
Well, that's really good.
regulation and dysregulation, self-regulation.
Right.
These are terms we really didn't throw out there or recognize, and I think for the longest time. People didn't recognize that every single person experiences trauma,
Right.
and it does not. First responder, some of us are in roles where we
We need one more.
experience more, whether it's secondary trauma by working with the people that
Oh,
have
guys,
experienced trauma.
Yeah.
But we all have our own.
Oh,
We all
yeah,
bring our own
yeah.
trauma, because I remember at one point when we were talking about it,
I think it'd be a
I'm like, have I really experienced
We need
trauma?
to do more.
And then I remember something from my childhood, and I'm like, that's what because here I am in my forties.
Yeah. And you
And
remember.
I'm like,
Right now?
holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember me.
But yeah, we all have that. Mhm. And people also
Yeah,
don't
that's actually a.
think about it, that really deal with the loss, whether it's of a person, maybe a job, maybe any kind of loss that we can think of. There's trauma, and people are only now, learning more about that and what trauma does to the brain. And how we can even rewire our brain after we've experienced trauma. There's a big fancy neurological term for that. But yeah, we can rewire our brain, and it's all pretty amazing. Resiliency.
Yeah.
No, and that's.
Uh-huh.
We need 8 for a forum. No, as far as the number,
For a quorum, I think you need a majority of people appointed. To make a decision, you need a majority of the total seats.
I mean,
So for 14, that would be 8, but I make a decision.
so, but to start the meeting, we'll need 8
So how many people are appointed? 10?
or.
Appointed?
Mhm.
Like the.
Seven council
Seven.
plus 3 appointed members, right?
Mhm.
10.
Yeah.
So you would need
Right.
6.
we're there, because Drew's here.
So,
And Jim is going to be joining online.
Yeah,
Okay.
as soon as I start.
we're
this,
totally
I'm
there,
gonna
that
start
counts.
it.
Right.
Enjoy.
Spread out. Hi. I think I want the hot seat today. Is that correct on that? But-
Yeah.
I've only been here for
So it's
so
the appointment.
It's hot in house. Good at improv, but not that good.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'll call this meeting to order. This is the City of Dayton Budget Committee meeting. It is Monday, May 19th, 2025, approximately 6:31 p.m. City Recorder, if we could have a roll call, or actually call to order. I just did that. Pledge of Allegiance. Would you mind leading us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, City Recorder, do we have a roll call?
We have. Budget committee members, Steve Hopper, Daniel Holbrook, Andrew Gonzalez. President, council members, Lee Mackin, Chris Tigro. Drew Hildebrand and Robin Peterson. And I believe, Council McGuire should be on Zoom shortly.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is appearance of interested citizens. Do we have anybody signed up?
No.
No one to sign up here in the room. Is there anybody online?
Actually, I didn't realize I needed to find out.
If you.
A minute.
Anybody for this session?
All right. No one for the appearance of interested citizens. We'll move on to the discussion of the proposed 2025-2026 budget. And city manager, do you want to make any statements as far as mayors? Or you want to go ahead and just.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Mayor Frank is absent tonight. She provided notice of her absence in advance. However, she did provide a written statement that she requested to be brought to the committee's attention. And I provided that commitment, that statement to the chair.
All right, so I'll go ahead and read it for the record. Greetings. First and most importantly, I want to take time to thank each one of you from our community members, the staff, the sitting council members. Your support and service to this community is truly appreciated. and I am honored to work with all of you. This community is an amazing community and continues to prove how resilient we are. Secondly, thank you for your grace and understanding about my absence at the last meeting and this meeting. I appreciate and need this time immensely. My 2 cents. I would like to see a multi-pronged approach to making the needed cuts in the budget. I'm not a fan of cutting staff benefits as our city is on the lower end of the pay scale. The benefits offered are one of the best incentives we have to getting and retaining good, knowledgeable employees. If it is decided that we must make cuts in an area, perhaps instead of a total cut of 6% for PERS, maybe we have employees pay 3% and the city pays the other 3%. It's a reduction, but realizing there are other areas we would need to look for further cuts that aren't as offensive as outright 6% cut to PERS, aiming to perhaps reinstating the 6% city paid PERS at a later date when we have conquered the shortfalls and are in a better economic place. Additionally, perhaps a review of the necessity and the need for a full-time economic development director is required. This is a newish position for the city to sustain, and there are many benefits to this role. This role plays a pivotal part, particularly in the light of new hotel and the famous Bay House restaurant about to open their doors. Our current economic development director, Dave, has had many connections and has been very much a part of our successes up to this point. Maybe even cutting back hours to 35 instead of 40. Again, the intent of reinstating 40 hours if and when we are in better economic condition. This might be a method worth considering for other roles too, for example, in administration. However, I do not feel that we are in a place that allows us to cut back any maintenance roles, particularly with the hot summer months coming and Dayton Friday nights about to begin. Finally, I believe we have no choice but to follow through with our water and sewer rates, utilizing those studies that have laid out exactly what is needed to maintain our levels of service and maintenance. But perhaps there's a way to tier it differently than present in an effort to avoid these costs all at once. I also feel that this is a tiered option of assessing public services fees on the utility bills to maintain our public safety levels with a full-time deputy are an option. My ideal is to make cuts in several different places so that we're not having to cut specifics outright. This is just a brief and honest account of my thoughts with regard to the budget before us. I have the utmost confidence in this process and everyone's input to create a just and fair budget that reflects our community's values. Again, thank you to everyone for giving your time and attention to this most valuable and important tool that we have as our community. Your support means a lot and just proves what a great community we have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I will go ahead and pull up. All right, thank you, Rocio. All right, thank you. All right, Budget Committee members, good evening. The goal for tonight is, first, I'm going to briefly describe changes since the last Budget Committee meeting and that how that impacts the numbers we're going to see tonight. Then I'm going to recap some key policy decisions that I spelled out in the budget message. Towards the end of the budget message, section 6 or 7, I believe it was, I listed the key policy decisions. The goal tonight is to work through those and to get a yes or no vote from the budget committee on those options. And then third is to discuss any funding options that you think we need to add back to the budget or that we need to take out. The outcome for tonight is to have some finalized decisions so that I can have a final draft of the line item budget and bring that to you for a vote at a third meeting. And I do believe that a third meeting will be required. Next slide, please. So I provided a memo that's in your packet, and in that memo, I listed changes to line item accounts. Most of these changes are due to our discussion from the first meeting, where we refined projections. There were some questions about certain accounts. They didn't match up to year-to-date actuals. So we refined those numbers. And the net impact of all of those numbers in your memo, and I'm not going to go through those. The net impact is for the general fund. There is an increase in the ending balance for fiscal 26 of about $11,000. For the sewer fund, a net decrease of about $1,400. And for the water fund, a net increase in the ending balance of about $4,400. So these are small movements, but they do impact available options, especially in the general fund, when we have a relatively small margin to get that fund back on track towards a surplus. Next slide. So for where things stand now, if we want to maintain the updated general fund surplus of $12,311, we need to find $13,477 in savings or new revenues to maintain that. That $13,477 is the pro rata formula that I used across the board for non-public works employees in the general fund. So if we want to achieve 100% staffing, if we want to add that $13,477 back in and maintain this updated surplus, we need to find offsetting cuts or revenues elsewhere. Option 1. Option 2. Stay on that slide, please. Go back to slide 2. Oh, yep, right there. Option 2. If we can't do that, select personnel cuts to achieve the $13,477 target. Or we can add back $73.75 to maintain the minimum 2 months expenditures. We just have to have a $4,900 surplus. Or the fourth option that I don't have here, but it was brought to my attention today, is you could consider an inter-fund loan from a healthier fund, or you could just draw down reserves or budget for drawing down reserves. We could take a wait and see approach and see how we close out this fiscal year and see how things go, say the midpoint of next fiscal year. If we're doing better than expected, then no cuts or smaller cuts are necessary. The flip side of that is if things are as bad as expected or worse, the extent of the cuts needed, especially to do a mid-year budget adjustment, would be even greater. So that's the calculation you have to do. So before we go to the next slide and to dive into some of these cut options, I want to ask the budget committee, is there anything here that you want to dive into? Or are you ready to start looking at personnel cuts?
Chair, may I?
Absolutely, Council.
So is this the time to have the conversation of if we want to achieve 100% staffing with zero cuts to operations? That's the discussion that we have at
Yes.
this point in time?
Yes.
Okay, let's have that discussion.
Okay.
I would propose zero cuts to staffing, to operations. I think we need full workforce for a year. I think you have to find, as you're saying, you have to find cuts for revenue elsewhere. And I'll be honest, guys, I absolutely love. I cannot express this enough, how awesome the fireworks event was last year. But that's a $15,000 expenditure that we could have full staffing for a year or fireworks for 2 minutes. I'm choosing the full staffing for a year. I love the fireworks event. I'm so happy that we did it, but that is an easy one for me. If it's taking care of these guys versus 2 minutes of awesome fireworks, I'm choosing taking care of these guys day in, day out, every day. So that's where I'm at.
Mr. Chair, may I
Absolutely.
comment on that? So the fireworks in the budget are offset 100% by donations. So if we cut the fireworks, the net impact would be the same.
Okay. Councilor Mackin.
We wound up covering half of it last year. Do we know for a fact that this year is 100% crowdsourced?
I would defer to Councilor Tyco on that.
It is currently being worked on right now. We've got half of it covered.
Okay, because we covered half of it last year.
Correct.
I think we're saying, no, we shouldn't be covering it this year.
So I'm so sorry, I'm interrupting.
If we can maybe just take, you know,
Yeah.
if you can finish your thought and then we'll
Yeah.
move on.
Sorry about
to the
that,
council.
Councilor Mackin, I apologize.
I would rather the city not cover any part of it, but here we have. I think we've already had to make an agreement so we can get it for July. I'm concerned about the city funding any part of it. I'd rather we didn't. But maybe we have to for this year. I think that's it.
All right. Additional,
I just want a point of clarification real quick, if that's okay. So Jeremy just said that it was 100% offset, but is the truth that it was half offset?
Last year, we paid half of it out of our community giving fund. It was $10,000, 5 was raised, we covered the rest of it. That was unexpected. At least I wasn't prepared for it. If we're this tight. How are we gonna cover it, even if we have to, if we cover half of it, how are we gonna do that?
all right, we have some additional thoughts. Sir Peterson.
Yeah, something was brought up that I need clarification on. Is there a contract signed with someone? You've indicated that we've signed a contract saying we're gonna pay so much money. Who's
So-
backing that up?
Sure. So contract has been signed. We have, just on the 15th sent our second payment in, which was 100% covered, first payment, second payment, 100% covered by our funds in the event committee. The second half of that, which is the 7,500, that's due, July 15th. And so the events committee is aware that they're working hard to fundraise and get sponsorships from community members and outside businesses to fund the rest of that. So if we were to default on that, the events committee would lose the 7,500 that they currently pay.
Other comments? We had some about special events. I think there's, you know, going back to the city manager's question, do you want to repeat what your question was for us?
So the question is, do we want to dive into one of the options presented on the screen here, or do we want to segue directly into personnel cuts? And I'd like to just note, with Councilor Hildebrandt's suggestion, if there is a projection that the 15,000 target for donations isn't going to be met. And if that program were to be cut, then that would result in a savings to the general fund. So I don't know what the answer to that is, if we're gonna, if that 15,000 donation target is attainable or not. If it is, then there's no net impact to the numbers that we're seeing.
And one more question, if I may. You commented that we could wait till mid-year for cuts or borrow from internally, with the hope that something will be better down the road. Do you have any forecast of the finances of any new or greater financial revenue coming in the next year? So I assume it's expected to be fairly flat other than COLA.
Correct.
So I'll throw this out for the committee. I would like to at least have the discussion about personnel cuts to achieve the $13,000 target. I think it's, personnel cut or personnel costs are always a big part of a budget, regardless of what organization you're with. So I think we should at least have the conversation, go through it. If there's, I know there were a number of components that were laid out in the original budget message, and see if there's any traction, and if not, then we'll have more homework to do.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm thinking a place to start might be to put the library assistant on hiatus. And work on bringing volunteers in. If I read it right, that might actually solve the problem.
So I thank you for that. I think we're just deciding if we're gonna actually dive into this. So if that's you're good with diving into it, is there any opposition for us not to dive into the conversation?
Counselor McGuire has something to say.
All right.
Yeah, I apologize, guys. My voice is not very good. I'm gonna be using the raise hand, lower hand thing, instead of trying to talk over you guys, because I know there's a delay. I am on board for diving into the discussion about personnel cuts. And I agree with Counselor Mackin that the library assistant is one, and then I think there's another one that we can talk about, but let's start wherever the chair would like us to start.
So we at least have 4 that are 5. So there's a general consensus, maybe not full support to take action yet, but at least have the talk.
Fair enough.
All right.
With that, Mr. Chairman, we'll go to the next slide. So in my budget message, I laid out 4 possibilities that we can consider. The first is a reduction in force. The second is reduce health benefits. The third is reduce retirement benefits. And the fourth is reduce hours. So we'll now go to the first of those options. On the screen here is a list of all of the non-public works positions, and their share of salaries is allocated to the general fund. I provided job descriptions for each of these positions in your packet. And at this point, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to the committee to discuss how you'd like to proceed on considering this option.
All right. I would like to ask, so you have a better sense of the work level. I mean, it's one thing to have position descriptions, which were provided, but the work level that's happening within City Hall is something that I don't see. So I can't speak to that. Is there any sense as far as if that position or another one, would it greatly impact operations?
Do you have a specific position in mind?
I think there's, the library assistant is one that came up.
Mr. Chairman, I would call upon the library director if she could speak to the impact of defunding that position. Cindy?
Okay, so the library is able to be open the hours that it is now because of that position. Because my position, I am the library director, but my position has changed throughout the years. And so I do a lot of different things for the city. And so basically, if I was staffing the library during those hours, then some of the responsibilities that I have would have to be taken off my plate. So I don't know what that would look like. But also volunteers are not an option for running the library because they are no longer allowed to make changes to the CCRLS database, so they can't check books out. Yeah, CCRLS has complete control over all of that kind of thing now. So. I mean, we have a self-checkout machine, that could be an option for people to use, but. Yeah. It's important for the library to have a staff member in there because they're the face of the library.
Yeah.
They provide valuable information, they provide services. So somebody would need to be in there if you want the library to remain open.
Cindy, for the benefit of the committee, can you please describe the CCRLS?
That's the Chemeketa Cooperative Regional Library System that we're a member of. There's 18 libraries in it. And we share resources like materials between the libraries. We have courier service that comes daily. CCRLS maintains all of our database, our online presence, everything like that.
Question.
Yes.
Is the library assistant also the one that helps to do all the different summer programs and those different things?
Yes, is involved in all of that as well. And we do kits for, the small libraries in CCRLS, we pool our resources and we share kits that we distribute throughout the summer, and she makes all of those kits. I mean, she does a lot of different things, and she's incredibly reliable. I mean, I know that's not a consideration or anything, but she was a volunteer for a lot of years before she got the paid position, and I feel like it's an asset to the community, and I hate to see that go. I understand that cuts need to be made, but I hope that that's not the option that's selected.
And we have hand raised online.
Yes, Councilor McGuire.
Thank you. What other, if you could just give us a quick rundown, Cindy, of what the other responsibilities you have that don't involve the library? And then I'd like to get an input from the city manager to know if there is any possibility that some of those duties could be absorbed by other staff members if Cindy had to put more of her time directly towards the library.
Okay, sure. I do the website, social media, the app, GoGov. Just a lot of things for administration. Yeah, IT, I do IT, I do the phones, I do the cell phones. I wear a lot of different hats for the city.
We wouldn't have known about that if it wasn't described in here. Or asked.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Councilor McGuire had a second part to that question that I can answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So as to the second part of that question, if there were a shifting in resources that required the library director to spend more time in the library, I believe it would be feasible to distribute some of those tasks to existing staff, including myself and potentially the city recorder. Those details would have to be worked out.
All right, and Councilor Peterson, you had your hand raised. Did you?
I have the same question that Councilor McGuire had.
Okay,
Just,
thank you.
just I wanted to, update as this minute from our librarian and only when she does. It sounds like you are our tech guru.
Councilor Hildebrand.
I just want to make sure, because we can't see him, that Councilman McGuire didn't have a follow-up to that.
He hasn't raised his hand.
Perfect, okay. Just wanna make sure.
Are there other questions? So let me just ask a question regarding option one. If this is one that this committee said yes, yes, are you looking for more detail than a yes, or are you fine with just a yes? This is an option that we want you to pursue to reduce and bring the budget. So let me.
In other words, what am I looking for from the budget committee?
Correct.
So if there's a consensus to cut a specific option, if that's the way the committee is leaning, I just need to know that so I can make that change to my numbers.
Mhm.
And bring that to you at the third meeting.
All right. Councilor McGuire,
Thank you. I wanted to bring up another possibility, and I need everybody in the room to understand that this is focusing on the situation. This has nothing to do with the people involved or their performance in any way. We are the only city of our size in the state of Oregon that has a tourism and economic development off, employee full-time. Usually it's done, at least with the little bit of research that I was able to do, there's either committees with some counselors on it and volunteers, or it's all volunteer. Kind of like the planning committee, et cetera, or the planning commission. I just want to throw that on the table as something that I think we need to do our fiduciary responsibility. We have to look at something like that. And when we're in times like this, where we have the water issues we're having and the vast amounts of money that we're gonna have to find somewhere to tie into Mac Water and Light, because that's probably the way we're gonna have to go. That sometimes hard decisions have to be made. And I think that is also something that we need to put on the table.
thank you. Councilor Dicro,
Thank you. Two questions. The first one is going back to the library assistant. If we were to go that direction, is there at all any possibilities of sharing duty with a neighboring city? Maybe, I don't know if that's a full-time position or if it's a part-time position that might be shared with, say, like a McMinnville or Lafayette, somebody else nearby. And then two, my apologies for bringing this up after the fact, but are we forgoing completely the options of increases in utilities? To kind of help in this issue that we have?
so I think this is still general fund that we're focusing
Okay.
on.
Okay. Just kind of-
Councilor McGuire,
No apologies, I forgot to put my hand down, sorry.
So, Mr. Chairman, there was a question about potentially sharing library assistance. I'll let the library director speak to that.
That position is a 20-hour week position,
Mhm.
and. I mean, I don't, what do you mean by sharing?
Well, I don't know if there's another part-time, library assistant somewhere nearby that might want some extra hours and come over here. And
We would
that
still
way, at
have to
least
pay
it
that
cuts
person.
down some of the time,
But we would still have to pay that person.
maybe a shorter amount of time. Is all I'm questioning.
I mean, we could reduce the hours that the library is open. But as far as like Lafayette doesn't have a library, so they
Okay.
wouldn't be an option, but. Yeah,
Okay.
she's 20 hours a week right now.
Okay.
Councilor Peterson,
Yeah, I think that tourism and economic development commission is too important to cut back on it. I know it's a unique position, although. Of for a city our size, I guess is the subtitle to that. But because of everything that we're doing and everywhere that we're going, and it's it's the tourism and economic development that's gonna bring in revenue. And so we go backwards on that and we fold. This is my opinion. So I would lean strongly away from cutting any hours in that position.
Councilor Hildebrand,
I would second that. I would be completely on with Councilor Peterson on this. I think that position doesn't get touched.
all right, so we've had some comments. Any other position that we wish to discuss, or would we like to provide direction? I think first off, this is just going back to your request, city manager, a yes or a no. And then if we want to actually dive into having consensus on a position, I think maybe then we can take that. Does that work?
Yes.
All right. Sounds
Can
like
I
you're
ask a
saying-
clarification? Is it possible to, cut, so take some money and so cut back some hours of that assistant position? So it was it's a $20,000 price tag, so cut it back 5 hours, cut it back, whatever. And then try to piecemeal our balance that we need to come up with,
Sure.
so.
Ask
It's
for,
not gonna be fun for anyone.
for clarification, Cindy. In here, it's, assistant is listed at $14.50 an hour. Is that still, as of 21, is that still the rate?
That is not the rate.
It had a range, it said 1450 to, I'm not looking at it.
On this page, it only shows $14.50.
Yeah,
Obviously, this person is probably the lowest paid in the entire
Yeah.
personnel
it's,
file. Yeah, that's right, the back page would.
I don't know that it, I don't,
oh, it doesn't.
It
it
doesn't
doesn't give
break it
the
down.
hourly rate, but it does give the annual salary on the
Yeah.
salary and wages allocation. That's page 122. All right, this is not easy work. This is not an easy topic because, we appreciate the services that we have, and to have less for our community is not where we want to go, but we're here. Yes, Councilor Mackin.
If it'll help, I know someone who would be happy to run the summer reading program for free. Makeup kits and stuff for this year, maybe even next year. If we have a temporary hiatus on the library assistant, summer reading will still get done. For free. I used to do it. I was paid like just above minimum wage, part-time seasonal. I think we, maximum of $1,000 for the summer, but I wouldn't be collecting money anymore, but I do have the experience. I've run summer reading. So we could do that even if we if we cut back on the library assistant. We could still do summer reading. I'll go with that.
All right, so I'm hearing we've had conversations predominantly around the library assistant. We've had brief conversations around the tourism and economic development director position. There has been suggestions not to touch that position. Let me just ask the committee, is there someone that would entertain a motion? Or do we need more discussion?
I think we
I
need
have
more
a
discussion.
question.
Yeah.
All right,
I got something,
make-
please feel free.
Question for Jeremy, would the city save any money if more people were hybrid and working remotely versus in an office or anything? How would that make any kind of a difference?
That's a great question. We're such a small crew here that if there were any savings in the utilities, it wouldn't be that much.
Okay.
And the fact is, for much of what we do, we have to be here at City Hall. Like for me, I have to be here. But that's a great question.
That's okay.
all right. Councilor Hildebrand?
So I'm wondering if we can kind of take a step back and go to the alternate cuts as well. So kind of just taking a step back away from the personnel piece of that, and then go towards, finding cost savings in other places. I'm looking at my notes from last time, and this is just me being inundated in pages and wanting to make sure I'm attributing things the right way. So our current events all go under the general fund, right? Or do they go-
No, they're recorded in the state revenue sharing plan.
State revenue sharing fund, okay. Like we were talking about last time, that like getting breakfast with Santa or, Halloween or something like that would have an effect on general fund, or we're saying that's not the case.
Yes, sir, that's in the state revenue share. Yeah, and you may be referencing, we did talk about cuts to those events,
Okay.
but that was specific for state revenue share.
All right, thank you, appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
All right, I want to take a pulse again. I know there were some questions, some statements. Is there any desire to make a motion, or is there a desire to maybe go on to the next option?
I would like to see the other options a little bit.
Go to the next slide. So option 2, reduce health benefits. So if we could, just provide some background, we provide 90%, the city pays 90% towards employees' premiums. If we're to cut that 80%, we have savings of 5,400, 70%. Well, over 10,000, 60%, 15,000, and so on.
Counselor McGuire.
Respectfully, I know how hard everybody at the city works, and I do not think that cutting benefits is the way to keep morale up or to balance, balance this type of issue that we have. I don't know a better analogy to use it. It's like, I think, instead of, poisoning the whole organism, I think we might have to do, I think cutting a position is the better way to go rather than bringing down all of the benefits that these hardworking people already have. Sometimes you have to amputate an arm, to save the entire organism, or in a hand, say in this particular instance, but that's better than poisoning the whole organism. And I don't think taking benefits away from the city, the employees that we have, is a way that's going to keep morale up, and is going to be a way that we can attract the high quality people that we have. I really do think that, there's a couple of options, and I think those would be better than cutting benefits.
Thank you for your comments. So we're about to go to option 2. And this is kind of going back to option 1. I guess for the sake of discussion, or is there a desire to make a motion to go forward with that? Or I'm seeing.
I'd like to just say that I agree with Councilor McGuire that cutting benefits does not feel like the option we should choose. And can we, Chairperson, can we actually move on from that? Because I don't think we should need to discuss it, in my opinion, unless anyone else has anything else to say.
So
I guess my motion is, let's not reduce health benefits.
okay. I'm joining you in, support of not touching benefits. I'm seeing a general consensus on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Counselor McGuire.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with eliminating the library assistant position for the next budget year.
There's a motion to eliminate the library assistant position for the next budget year. Is there a second?
I'll go ahead.
All right, Counselor Mackin is a second. I guess all those in favor, you can raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 ayes and nays or against. 2 against. 3 against. So 5 doesn't get us.
No, the budget committee, to make a decision, has to have a majority of the total seats. So you need a vote of 8 to make a decision.
Do we have a maybe? I feel like I need to marinate And feel like we need a third option. Can we have a maybe vote?
All right, so that motion failed.
Well, hold on real quick. Can I understand what the vote and what the quorum is and what a majority is? What's the number?
Mr. Chairman, I asked for just a moment. I'm gonna consult the local budget manual to make sure we're getting this right.
While we're waiting on that, option 3 and 4 were also some kind of cut to employees. So equally distasteful.
This here, I'm reading from the local budgeting manual from the Oregon Department of Revenue. It cites the Oregon Administrative Rules. Any budget committee action requires the affirmative vote of a majority of the total budget committee membership. The total budget committee membership is 7 council plus 7 appointed for 14. So a majority of 14 is 8. So to make a decision, you have to have a vote of 8.
Yeah, that's, yeah, so we have to all be on board or not. And if it's a not, then we still need to come back with ideas on how to address the deficit. So I think for the purpose of moving on, we didn't have traction with that motion, but there still is. It's on the table.
Yeah.
Unless anybody raises their hand or says they want to further discuss option 2, I would suggest we moved on to option 3.
I agree.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
Councilor McGuire.
Yes, going forward, because I can't see online, I would request a roll call vote, so I understand who's voting for what, because I can't see it. I'm on my phone, because my laptop, and I can't see everybody raising their hand on the Zoom thing, so I'm requesting a roll call vote, every vote, please.
So we'll do that moving forward. I don't know if you have who voted yes and who voted no.
I do not.
You don't, okay.
Vote.
Well, if we're gonna vote again, then I think we need a motion again.
Okay.
That's
So
what.
Angie, Councilor Tyco, and myself, or.
Voted.
Counselor Hildebrand, Tycro, and budget member Angie voted no. And Russ voted yes.
All right, so if we can move on to option 3.
Option 3 is another reduction of benefits. This would be to reduce the employer contribution to the public employee retirement system. So right now, the city pays the required 6% that employees are required to contribute to their PERS. That's not required. We don't have to do that. But if we didn't do that, you can't split it. State law and administrative rules require it to be either you do 100% of the contribution or none. You can also pull out certain classifications of employee and say, for this classification, we'll contribute PERS, and for this one, we won't. But just to split it, that's not possible.
Councilor Tyco.
Is this a scenario where it's all or nothing, where if we
Yes.
remove it, you can't add it back in a year down the road, or can you pause it for a year?
You can do that,
Okay.
but there has to be a change to the personnel manual or some other council action.
Okay.
But you could take it out and then add it back in at a future year.
Question.
Committee Gonzalez.
Is this also the area that our mayor suggested just to cut it to 3%?
It is.
Okay. And that would save us.
We can't do that.
Right.
Can't do that. State law doesn't allow us.
All right, so any other questions or discussion? Otherwise, I think, is this a yes or a no? Are we keeping this in or taking this off the table?
And someone outside have a comment on this.
Public comment period was at the beginning.
I know, but they're going through this stuff and,
I understand, but public comment period was in the beginning. If you do wish to submit written comment, you can do that as well, and we can receive that at any time. All right. Back to the committee.
So this is option, excuse me. So this is option 3. Do we have a fourth option? Was there a fourth, Jeremy?
Yes.
Okay. Can we see what that is?
Next slide, please. So the fourth option would be a reduction in hours for non-public works employees. That includes myself. The savings in here include myself. So the first box you'll see up there is if we did 96 furloughs hours, so that's for all paid holidays. So if we were to say you're just not going to get paid holiday, that's what that is. That would result in about 8,500 in savings. Then if we reduced hours per week, we did 39 hours per week, that'd be about 5,100 in savings. That's pay plus FICA. And this is just for the general fund, mind you. So that would be savings and all other funds. So the savings are just for the general fund. So that shows you hours per week and then the savings for each scenario.
So can you explain furloughs? Is this a reduction in pay?
Effectively, yes.
I'm not a fan of this. So.
It's been a common method for local school districts. Newburgh has 3 teachers have 3 or 4 furlough days. And so therefore their salary. And in their case, they got a raise, but then they got furlough days. So you erase their raise, that kind of thing. So it's a very common when your budget is low. Not fun. I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm just explaining. It's a common way.
All right, any other comments on option 4 by the committee? Are we leaving this on the table or are we taking this off?
I guess, I mean, there's a lot of obviously hesitancy amongst all of us. To start with all this ugliness with towards personnel. It just feels like a scary place to start. I mean, it feels like a last resort. And I feel like, why are we starting with our last resort? But maybe, am I missing something? I don't know. It feels like this hurting our personnel doesn't feel like where we should be starting. It feels like, wow, we have cut everything else, we're down to the nibs, we need to get furlough days, but so myself, I would like to move on to find some other. If there's any fat left anywhere else, I'd like to cut that first before we affect our staff.
All right, so that's one comment.
So-
Brent.
Thank you, Chair. So correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I'm just paper overload. So the general fund in its entirety with all the line items starts on page 69. Right, so we're looking at page 69, 70, 71. And then the backside of 72. So this is what we have to work with. It is my understanding.
Correct.
Okay, so when we look at it line by line, there's really not, a lot of flexibility outside of operations. I do have one question though, with regard to 100 dash 100 dash 752 dash 000. What is the Dayton Harvest Festival that's being requested gifting grant? Is that the fireworks or is that something else?
That is the fireworks.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so then why is that allocated here, but all the other events are allocated to the other fund?
Because this specifically is intended to be 100% offset by donations, and from an accounting perspective, it is not properly accounted for in the state revenue sharing.
Perfect. Okay, cool, thank you, I appreciate that clarification. That answers my question. So yeah, I mean, when you look at the line items that we got, there's not a ton of wiggle room within this fund. I do have one more question with regard to 100 dash 100 dash 705 dash 300 data processing. Is the increase in the budget for this the need for our servers? Yeah,
Part of that is.
okay.
Other part is projected increases in our IT services contract. This also has Cassell subscription, is that correct? Yeah.
And could you explain what that is?
Cassell is our accounting software.
And, bringing up the account. It's also for our GoGov, and AlexaNet. As well.
All right, so I feel like we haven't completely moved off option 4. Is it off the table or is it still on the table? Councilor Mackin.
Something from history. Back in the early part of the century, we had a recession followed by an economic downturn. And it seems people got through that by having a whole bunch of people take like a 10% pay cut. It meant nobody had, fewer people had to lose their jobs, while a whole bunch of people lost a little bit. It worked in the past, I don't know if it's going to work anymore. But a little bit of a cut from a lot of people has worked, for what that's worth.
Thank you. I actually have a question for the city manager. Do you have a sense of our pay scale? Where do we, the mayor mentioned that we're on the lower range for a lot of our positions. Do you have any sense if that's reflective of, League of Cities data or?
I don't know where we stand, to be honest. I mentioned in my budget message, I wanted to fund a pay and benefit studies so that we could determine that, but I didn't put that in the budget. For today's purposes, I don't know the answer for that.
Okay. My personal, thought on this is, or my professional thought is, if we were just an island with Dayton on it, I would feel okay with that statement. But because we're really part of the greater Portland Metro Salem area, people can work, there is remote work. And I have a concern with reducing pay and benefits, because then I know for me, there's a certain point that I would just be looking for a different job. And so I don't want to lose talent in the city, and regardless, cuts are difficult. The question is where they happen. All right, so option 4, I need to get a sense of, is it off the table? I'm seeing off the table,
McGuire.
Counselor McGuire.
Yes, off the table in my opinion.
So that takes us back to, I think, option one, where we didn't land on a motion that could pass, but it was still on the table. Before I kind of drill down, is there any other great idea that we could find savings somewhere? Because that's the challenge that the city manager has given us, that, you know, we need to find $13,477.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
so we've gone through all of the options. And we are also going to be talking tonight about raising rates and fees. And if we're going to be raising rates and fees on our constituents, on our neighbors, then they need to see that the city is also trying to find ways to save money and just not asking for more and more. I know the original motion passed, but if this was my company and I could, get to where I needed to be by letting go one part-time person versus cutting pay and benefits for everyone else, I would rather have a smaller team of full-time people than a bigger team of part-time people. And I do think that original option is the best and the cleanest that we have.
So there's, sounds like there's still interest to pursue that motion. Counselor Hildebrand, any follow-up or questions?
Question for the city manager. So if we did cut that, the library assistant position, what would happen with the excess, savings? Would that just go into the general fund?
It would. So something you could consider is if you go back to slide number 3, please. So I started this presentation talking about the changes that were made since the last meeting.
Mhm.
And that resulted in a general fund surplus that went from about 4,000 to 12,000. So you can add about $7,400 back and maintain that minimum 2 months expenditures. You just have to have an ending scenario where the general fund has a $4,900 surplus. So if you subtract 13,477, if you subtract 73.75 from that, we're looking at $6,100 in savings to ensure that the general fund ends in a surplus in fiscal 26.
So, yeah.
Yes,
I feel that kind of goes back to one comment that I made. Can we cut the library assistant's hours back to get to the right amount of money that we need to save? But right now, 20 hours a week, I think if we went back, if we cut 6 hours out, I think if I'm doing the math in my head correctly, and so it should be 14 hours a week, I think we'd be there. Someone else can do the math officially. But so still paying 14 hours a week, I know that's a hardship on the library and it's awful. But maybe we can pick up some volunteer time, like Kitty suggested, just until we get back on our feet. So cutting the hours to make it balance out, whoever wants to do the math.
So what I might suggest, if there's a desire to entertain something along that as a motion, maybe not trying to give specifics about how many
Yeah.
hours, but telling the city manager, this is a position where you would like hours reduced.
To make it balance.
To get to the level, and if at some point, it's realized that there's more funds, then great. If not, then that's the area to target. Does that?
Yes, thank you. That, I second that motion.
Okay, so That's a motion to,
Reduce hours to make the balance, the budget balance.
for the library
Assistant.
assistant. And then directing the city manager to, do the math on that ultimately, and. So I'll just leave it at that. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Mr. Hooper? All right, all those in favor, actually, if we could have a roll call, please, as requested.
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes.
Counselor Tyra,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire,
Yes.
All right, motion passes, and that's unanimous. All right, city manager, you have your direction on this part.
I do, thank you. Okay, let's go to slide 9, please. All right, another policy decision that I put in the budget message was deciding on a temporary closure to the community center. One of the cuts that I made in the recommended budget to bring the general fund back into balance was to maintenance and utilities for the community center. I'm asking for direction tonight from the budget committee on if you agree with that approach or if you want to add it back. If we want to add it back, anything that we add is going to affect the decision that we just made on the general fund surplus that we're targeting. So since the last meeting, staff informed me that we already have 26 reservations through December. The intention, of course, is to honor those reservations. They've already paid $3,700 in reservation fees. I added that. I also added $2,000 in maintenance. Based on previous year's activity, utilities are about 10,000 a year. Does that sound correct, team? About 10,000 a year. Maintenance is 10 to 20,000. That sound about right? So if we want a full-time community center, we need to consider that we fund it at that level. So option A is to temporarily close it while honoring current reservations. This will give us time to develop a sustainable funding model for the community center. Option B is to keep it open, add budget back to adequately fund it, or we could do something else.
So I have a question on the C of something else. So closing a facility doesn't mean that maintenance ends.
Correct.
And if deferred maintenance, it usually means that you get a bigger bill later on, usually multiplied by some number. Is there, and I don't know if the council previously has looked at, fees, some increase to shorten or close that gap. Any thoughts on that or reaction?
That is absolutely what I would look at if we chose option A. Not only if we chose option A, but also if we decided to keep it open. That is something we should absolutely look at.
Councilor Hildebrandt.
So out of curiosity, and remind me, because I can't remember off the top of my head, the year in which the community center opened. Out of curiosity.
2012, maybe.
2012. So in the last 13 years, has the fees in which we charge versus what we pay to maintain it, has that ever broken even?
I
Has it
did.
come close?
I did an analysis for the past 3 or 4 years, and well, think I mentioned that in my budget. I did an analysis of the past 3 or 4 years, and on average, fees are covering 72% of utilities and maintenance. That doesn't include employee overtime and on-call pay.
So losing money, fine. We know that this, I'm kind of going down the seat, man, I can take that away.
Absolutely.
So going down to something else, we know that we need a new city hall. We know that we have some money via grant that we could use at least in part for design, so long as it leads directly to construction. You know, I would actually be in the camp of a complete shutdown, temporary close. While honoring current reservations, and then starting in the coming, fiscal years, if we know that this space will never break even. Yes, it's performing a great service, but the reality is, we as a city cannot function in a deficit in all realms, right? And so we know that this is a money suck, we know that there's a great return for the community, but can we afford to keep doing it in the way that it is? I think it would be better suited as a city hall long-term. And so I would be in the camp of, the temporary close while honoring current reservations, but also pursuing a conversion of that space while it is closed in the coming years to make that what we need version 2 of this space to become. So just a thought.
I had that same thought, see if we could revamp that in the city hall and the library.
So are you leaning towards the option A in support of that, or?
This is more like, see, something else. Honor the commitments while working on turning it into a city hall. If we have it as a city hall and library, we can reserve some of that library space for events. We can still do summer reading and national night out. So see something else.
So I have a question in the space of C, something else. The reservations, is a lot of that summertime, fall, winter. I'm familiar more with the fall, winter activities that occur there, but do we have a sense of what that looks like?
Somebody on the team like to chime in on that?
I will, from what Ricky told me, it sounds like there's several things for the summer. There's several things in the fall and a few in like Christmas time, so it's kind of picking up a little bit, but it's kind of stays pretty flat in there. I can get her to give me a breakdown for the reservations that are out there and just kind of figure out what months those are.
Councilor Matthews.
There's another option. What can we do to promote this to get more business in there? And if we get more activity going, maybe we're just not using it enough. Maybe we need to promote it more.
Councilor Peterson.
So the community center is, kind of my dream space, right? I'm the performing arts person but that space is, absolutely not being used enough. And I think we need to do temporarily close it, and step back and say, how can we use that space? Can we be doing dance lessons, mariachi, violin lessons, fiddling? I mean, square dancing. I mean, what can we do in that space? Bring groups in, charge more. But I think we need to step back and regroup and say, okay, fabulous space, amazing space, dream space. It needs lighting, we've had these conversations. We need some lights, we need some sound, we need, I've got theater stuff figured out. I mean, I got it all, right? But we're not there. And I think we just need time. And if you have calculated, city manager, have calculated that temporarily closing saves us some money, then we do that, and we start to brainstorm on how to use that space in a brilliant way. I like the idea, sorry, like that, I love the idea. I've also had it of using it as office space to keep y'all safe. But I think A is a great option because it gives us time to step back, get some grant money and go for it.
Thank you.
It's tourism and development.
Counselor McGuire,
Yes, I agree with Counselor Peterson and any discussions of having that building be used as city hall, this is not the right place or time to have it. That would have to be happening in a council meeting, not in a budget meeting.
thank you.
Okay.
All right, yes,
Quick question with regard to A, so temporary close while honoring current reservations, is the idea that we would. So, not take any more for the rest of this year and then continuing through 26 as well to a. Undetermined amount of time, is it just, when it says temporary close, it's like a permanent temporary close, it's not like the reservations are gonna be lifted a year from now. And people can start booking a year from now, right, so it's indefinite until lifted.
Correct.
Just making sure I'm tracking right, okay.
all right, any other discussion before someone wants to propose a motion? Counselor Peterson,
I move that we choose option A, temporary close while honoring current reservations. Step back and reevaluate.
there's a motion to go with option A. There is a second by Counselor McGuire. All those in favor?
Roll call. Roll call.
Roll call.
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes.
Counselor Tigra,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire,
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move on to the next slide. All right, public safety fee, as I outlined in the budget message, the local option levy fund has exhausted its resources. So we need to make a decision on either reducing hours for the law enforcement services contract or other costs in that fund. There are some staffing costs in that fund. Or implementing a public safety fee. This chart shows the number of hours reduction in patrol, weekly patrol, in order to achieve and the savings associated with that. So I project a gap of about $65,000. That could either be filled through a new revenue source or a reduction in the hours for our contract from 40 per week to about 28 per week. Or we could look at reducing staff or other expenditures in that fund. And I'm seeking direction from the committee tonight on which option to select. And to recap, the fee to generate the gap is $6.25 per month per utility customer.
All right, are there any questions to start off the discussion? Counselor Hildebrand.
So this is the first fee that we are discussing for the evening, but there are multiple fees that we'll be discussing, correct?
Yes, sir.
How many fees in total?
Stormwater fee is another new one, and then water and sewer increases are on the table.
Gotcha, so in some ways, we need to talk about all of them before we can make a decision on one of them, because they'll all impact each other, because they're all in the same place.
So are you requesting that we review all of them and then walk through?
Yes, sir.
I see nodding of heads. That sounds good. Okay.
Okay, so the next fee on the table was a stormwater fee, which was proposed in the recommended budget. The amount of fee recommended was $2.32 per month. This would be to start a new stormwater fund. Initially, this fund would pay off the debt service or stormwater line replacement. And then it could be used to pay for stormwater master planning, maintenance, and other facilities going forward. Alternatively, the budget committee could decide to put this stormwater line replacement in the sewer fund to maintain the balance in the sewer fund. The sewer increases would need to go from 19 to 22%. So 2784 with the dedicated stormwater fee, 2592 per year for single family residential customer if we put it in sewer fund. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please. Water rate increase. The recommended budget has a 5% increase to the variable rate. This is the amount of cubic feet of usage. The rate study recommends increasing the base rate each year by CPI. Had we followed that recommendation, which we didn't, the base rate would have increased 19%. And the table here shows what the deficit would be with each option. Variable for the water fund. You either do a variable rate and have a $251,000 deficit, or a 19% base rate and have a $167,000 deficit.
City manager, could you give an example of what that might look like for an average household bill per month?
Yes. Y'all write this down.
On the documents provided, a single family residential customer with a 19% increase would mean $85.50 per month for sewer.
There you go. Yes, sure.
So this is water rate or this is sewer rate?
What Councilor McGuire mentioned was sewer rate.
Ultimately, my question is, I want to get a sense of what is a monthly, with all these fees, and this is going to Councilor Hildebrandt's. What does that look like on a monthly increase? So if we're adding everything up without that bigger picture, it's harder to.
Yes, if I may have some questions for Don. So Don, for the variable rate for water, is that how much allowance do you have in the base? Is that 200 cubic feet? Does anybody know the answer to that?
I'm not sure.
Can somebody pull up the rate schedule and? So you get 200 cubic feet for the base. Okay, great. And then it goes up. Tier 1. How much do you get for tier one?
Two. 100 cubic feet.
That's per 100 cubic feet. When does tier two kick in?
It just says 100 cubic feet.
Deanna, do you know the answer to this question? When does tier one and tier two, tier three kick in?
I'm not sure. We've got time. Let's pause and we get the answer then.
We want to take a break. Take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, let's take a recess.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, let me go. get
Recess.
that. I'll go get that.
I'm sorry, do we have a time we're coming back? How long is this recess for those of us not in the room?
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody find the answer and meet me in my office, please.
400 cubic feet.
So, okay. There's no, so, please. They asked for a moment to crush. This is, you're gonna eat all your crust?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that's what we're. You already have. Yeah. Absolutely.
No, I think the sewer was 19.
Yeah, well, there's these anyway.
Yeah, which would raise it, that would make it 85. Yeah.
There's not gonna be.
Very good. Yeah.
Hi. Right.
Front office paperwork.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Got Ricky on the phone.
Oh, thank you.
It's nice to see every day.
You get one.
You want one?
He came there on Friday, so it.
I don't know if you guys.
No, I'm really good.
And then I.
About to-
I'm guessing
And that
that one or two kicks in, after 300 cubic feet.
Or over 200.
Right.
You were right.
Like,
I think I
first
remember.
kick in it.
I
So
know
tier
we
one is 200, tier two would be 300, right?
think Deanna just handed something to us, we're all looking at rate brochures right now.
Base rate is 200, so then 201 to 400 is tier one.
Yes.
101 to 800 is tier two, and then 101 is tier three.
So 200, 400.
Never acceleration, 100 cubic.
They're like, no, we're looking at it. It went over.
I never take pictures of my phone.
So it's like, oh my gosh. So.
Yeah, 200 to 400.
Because you just.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's.
Yep.
I was. I didn't think like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, something with zero expectation and just everything. The presentation was
Oh, and. I never have.
But we had a great talk and we got some things and I've got my list of people that I need to recruit. I'm crazy. every day
$6.
For the next thing.
Okay.
And then the next week.
The brochure says $6.
It's a different.
About what. So she.
$5.40.
Actually.
It's $7.20.
She was super.
$5.40.
Events and kind of events.
What were you?
I did mention, well, I wanted to talk about the money, I spent, I said, anything money I did is to go over. But if you're only gonna give me 3 minutes, it doesn't make any sense. So kind of do high school. I'm wasting my time, I don't
Is there,
plan that.
is there things that you either?
No, I did. There were certain ones that I really, because I listened in on the last meeting. And one of the things that bothers me, you know, as a counselor, there's things in this community that I'd like to see so go. And that involves the park.
He's allowed to get, he's allowed to
Go,
Yeah, yeah.
the Christmas in the park, the Friday night. Things that bring community together.
And I already told Michelle.
I don't understand why you want. I mean, because I need help.
That's everybody's got.
And,
So 200.
I could see.
But 247, and then 300 to 400.
Yeah, no, she.
Upgrading our water.
Yeah, she does fine. I realized that you're missing everybody, that's Michelle, but it is nice. So I'm glad to.
Bring in the urban.
You know what I mean?
I'm doing the landscape.
So no.
I'm doing things and,
You like. Have one conversation. And you're like, okay.
That's all. I have a problem with the bunch of 5 million. And the city center had to. There was 140.
Tier 2 and 401.
On the refrigerator. Something needs to be, needs to set aside. Or you're never gonna get one, but it's okay. Our roads. A lot of our, I'm really not about to make it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that got job.
So we had to say, oh, but they were really discouraged.
Yeah.
I'm good.
You know,
right.
and so,
Bye.
finally, after a year and a half, we were they
No.
offered, that's good.
My will,
And every year.
she said 201 to 400.
Yeah.
Had to pay $600 some dollars to have a meeting.
Yeah. I've been to
Great, yeah.
the zoning and the state guy and
Base rate plus the-
what all the rates are
Yeah.
for development.
Yeah,
And it's pretty complicated.
yeah.
It's per cubic feet.
And then I
This is per, like per 100 cubic feet.
Yeah, I'm out.
You know, so
Yeah.
200 going to 400, you pay $3. 300 cubic.
So is that not?
For one, and then that's in New
You are
York.
in the urban growth boundary, but
Yeah.
not
So
in
you know how
the-
much it is.
No, and I was.
And this series.
Yeah.
I already have a lot on the next road, well, we didn't like first.
No, the 19 is.
Oh.
Well, it's per
And
100.
the next road is on hold too.
Yeah, and so I really.
So $3.
$3 for city switches, it's got all the sides, they're gonna allow.
Now, y'all calculate
Doesn't
a
make any sense.
house you can
Would
buy.
make it more at planning committee or the state regulation?
No, it's good. It was just city.
The planning commission committee,
No, it was the city council.
it was.
And I've been told by different people, it could be 3, 6, it could be 20.
Yeah.
So.
And I did say 20 years is too long.
Showtime and 60.
Yeah,
All right,
well, the other guy that's selling with me, he's 83.
Yes.
Yeah, understood.
I just didn't know that I used the line.
I had 59 last thing.
Because it makes no sense.
Are you
Getting
People.
Before you further.
Charging full.
Well, for what
That's
they
awesome.
talk about, I didn't.
Some people are $1.
Thankfully, I'm not
Are
the
you
one
doing
having it
the-
back. I'd have to go back on, you know.
I'd have to just need, I just need spreadsheets.
Well,
I like formulas, I like.
but it looks like on here you were trying
I'm
to get
social
4887.
And the reason why I can't math
Here too.
and I don't need to.
Yeah.
Just one, a few more moments, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
We'll make sure my. So I have 544 cubic feet.
Everyone bouncing on the floor.
Of a house.
I'm so proud.
644 is remain, divide that by 100. Multiply that by 3. Then you take the base, add those two, and get 5919.
Okay, but it doesn't, if I have to do it, we're gonna prorate it, it sounds like it's per 100 cubic feet,
Less than 19%.
right?
Mhm.
So it would be, it'd be the base rate and then plus 200 cubic feet, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Base rate in the 344. So 344 divided by 100, up to 100.
Right, but it's tier 3, or I'm sorry, tier 2. Cause it's 401 to 800 cubic feet, and you said 544.
Tier 1 kicks in at 201.
Correct, but you said 544 cubic feet.
Yeah, so you start with 544. Subtract the 200 from it, and that leaves you at 344 you're billing.
Okay, I just interpret it differently. Because you get the 200 included in here, so you pay the base rate plus the additional in that too.
Why do you go to tier 2?
Because it's 401 to 800 cubic feet. So if you're using 544, that falls in that range.
There you go.
Right?
Well, then. You never get to do it again.
You would if you use 300 cubic feet.
Late 21. Okay. I don't have.
Water.
Yeah, water.
You're on 6 water, they're up there.
No, I only replaced their
Oh, okay, in town.
$150. To 160.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
64.
That's for water and sewer.
Yeah,
yeah,
but that doesn't include all these things.
That I needed to add,
right.
because I was doing. On the additional 200 cubic feet, I needed to.
I have a duplex, but they ran the
Basically.
water to
Is this right?
1 meter,
I think you're good there.
and I'm over 2,
All right, that makes sense now?
Yes.
Okay.
well over 2.
All right, let's reconvene the meeting. City manager, you have numbers for us?
Yes, I want to ensure that Councilor McGuire, you back with us.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, y'all, let's work through this together. So you got your pen and paper handy?
Sure.
All right, let's start with water. Current water rates. 64.35 for average home.
What?
$64.35
Per month.
per month.
That's not what it says here, okay. 64.35?
Correct. That's assuming 544 cubic feet, which is about 5,000 gallons. Sewer. $71.85.
plus the 26. For the debt service, that's what we see on our invoice, right?
This is 71.85, y'all, and does that include the increase since February?
Yeah. it does.
71.85 is the current rate.
Oh, okay. So that's not really our sewer cost.
Somebody have a total there?
$36,100.
All right.
Sure.
Counselor.
Quick question. So this 7185, Counselor McEnroe's good point. So if we're talking about percent sewer rate increases, the fee that's on the sewer, is that fee that's the
26 or something, the
26.
debt service.
is that eligible for percent increase as well? Is that part of, so if we increase by X percent, is it also increasing that component of it? Or is
Yes.
it the base rate outside of that 26?
That's included in the 71.85, correct?
Right, I'm just making sure that that fee, that component that's to pay off that loan, that is still subject to any. That number, that 26, whatever, is still subject to whatever percent increase. So if we increase it by 5%, that $26 goes up by 5%.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's all I just wanted to make it. It's lumped in together.
Yes.
But we're paying the $26 specifically as a debt service. It's not part of our sewer cost. It's just part of this bill. So if we need to raise sewer rates. Why are we raising the rate on our debt service?
So right now with our current rate structure, it's just a flat monthly rate based on the customer type.
Right,
And that flat monthly rate, based on my model, I have the increase applying across the board to get us to the resources we need to have an acceptable ending balance. So that doesn't separate it out. It's just the increase that we need for that fund to stay solvent. Now, the rate study talks about completely overhauling the sewer rates, and that's something we need to do. I don't believe we're going to have time to do that before budget adoption. So to balance the sewer fund, unless other cuts are made, that rate across the board needs to go up 19%.
but we're raising the debt service fee by 19%.
Yes. Well, you could separate out, you could take the 71.85 and take that out and say the increment above, the 45.85 on top of that, the extra amount is getting lumped into that, and say the 26 stays flat and pays debt service. But across the board, my numbers show it needs to have the equivalent of a 19% increase to the sewer fund to remain solvent.
All right, so if I did my math right. So that's $6.25 for public safety, $2.32 for stormwater, $3.21 for water rate increase. I'm just doing with the average to say, if I'm the typical Dayton resident, this is what I might be able to expect. And then for sewer, that would be $13.65. That equals $25.43 a month.
Jay, could you start over on those fees? I was trying to write it down and you went a little fast on me.
Okay. All right, so public safety is $6.25 a month. This is what's being proposed, so nothing's passed. $2.32 per month for stormwater. Then for water rate increase, and again, just doing it off of the average, $3.21. And then sewer is $13.65. And feel free to say I am wrong. So that's $25 more a month that we will need to collect from the average. Obviously, there'll be some that may be more, some that may be less. If this is supported.
What was the number you came up with?
25.43.
Yep, that matches mine.
Are there any questions or discussions, or do we want to continue? Is there anything else that we want to touch on fees, or does that? I think that wraps it, 'cause that's water, sewer, public safety, stormwater.
Mr. Chair, I guess my question would be, are those the numbers? Does that match up to Jeremy's math? When he said if we implement the 19% rate increase, that would result in a $38,743 deficit in the water fund rather than a $251,000. Do those numbers match to what Jeremy put into his spreadsheets?
Could you ask that question again, please?
The $6.25 for public safety, the $2.32 for stormwater, the $3.21 for water, and the $13.65 for sewer, adding up to $25.43 per household. Does that match the numbers that you came up in your spreadsheet that gave us the numbers you put into the supplemental budget message on page 3 of 4 when it was talking about discussion on water and sewer rates? Will this take us to the $38,743 deficit for the water fund if we do this? Because this is the 19% increase you talked about, right?
I need to talk about that. I need to bring that to your attention. Thank you for pointing that out. I came in over the weekend and re-looked at my budget workbook, and I couldn't duplicate how I came up with that number. So the number that I came up with was actually on the slide on the screen there.
And which number are you?
One
You wanna reference?
67.
The 167,746.
Not the 38,743 that was in the packet that we got delivered.
Correct. I believe that was an error on my part. I couldn't duplicate that number.
Okay, but this projected $167,746 deficit is based on this 2543, right?
Yes.
Thank
Well, hang on, let me just double check that.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'm just trying to make sure that the numbers we're coming up on the fly here match what's actually in the spreadsheets that the city manager is using to base these numbers on.
So the numbers that I gave, just for the great disclaimer, is just to give what an average bill might look like for someone in Dayton, not how they might add up, in total for additional revenue or what the deficit would look like. So that wouldn't change any of the proposed numbers that the city manager. Now, if there's other thoughts on the rate, and I guess if maybe for a little bit of clarification, do you have a slide on the sewer rate?
Yes.
Could you walk us through this? We hadn't seen this slide yet.
All right, so the recommended budget has a 19% increase to sewer rates as they currently exist. That would result in an $85.50 50 cents per month per single family customer. That is a $13.65 increase. The rate study has a completely new methodology that I think we should implement. And if we were to follow that methodology and update it to point where it says it needs to be updated, that would result in a monthly bill of $94.31. So this slide shows that the proposed increase is less than what the rate study would have us do.
And can you, I know you touched on this on your updated memo. You spoke a little bit about the complexity of the rate study. Can you maybe give a little bit more detail? And then if you actually went with that new rate structure, how much time would you need with staff to actually prepare that, propose that to the city council? Is that 3 months? Is that 12 months? Do you have a sense?
I would estimate 4 months to be on the safe side. If we're going to do a complete overhaul of our rate, I want to ensure we're doing it right and we're not rushing it. Once we start tinkering around in the accounting system, it gets very complicated, and this is a somewhat complex rate structure. So I would estimate sometime in the fall before we could have it in place.
Okay, before we go for additional comment. You just referenced 3 months or 12 months.
Right.
And I would just encourage you maybe take a little bit more time because things always take way longer. My mom always says double the amount of time and then I might be close to right. So, yeah, exactly. Just like cooking. Councilman McGuire, comments?
Yes, we did this as a council back in 2023. That's when the sewer rate study was completed. And we were going to implement this, but we were waiting to see if we could get some congressional direct spending money, a grant. And as a council, we decided to delay until we heard if we were going to get that money. Obviously, under the current situation in Washington, that money never showed up. So we had talked about this as a council. We had agreed it was something we were going to do. We were just going to wait until we saw if we could delay it so that we weren't putting additional increases quite so fast on top of the debt service rate increases. So this is something the city council has been briefed upon. It has been something the council previously agreed to do. And we had a presentation by the folks who helped us do the study and everything. So I do think it is going to take time, but this is something the council has already basically agreed we were going to do.
I can
Councilor
clarify. The idea is to charge sewer based on water usage as opposed to just spreading it out equally. Right now, if you use 200 units of water or 1,200, you pay the same amount for sewer. So if you're only using 200, you're kind of subsidizing other people's stuff. We had been talking about this for as long as I've been on council, spreading it out more equally, but it's tough. Basing it on average water usage. It is a tricky formula. I didn't even understand it and I was the one who suggested it. So it's going to take some time to figure out. It's going to take a while to put it in print so you can actually follow it. It'll take time.
All right, thank you for those words of advice.
Thank you, Chair. So if this would take 4 months, 8 months, 12 months, however long it would take, is it within the realm of possibility and advisable for us to do a partial permanent rate increase and then do the variable as well? So let's say we raise our sewer rates by 5%, just across the board. And then, because we still have that $160,000 deficit. right? So we still have to tackle that, and then we introduce the variable rate 8 months down the line. For this new program, that then makes it more of a fair, program, all things said and done. I think if I'm understanding this correctly, as we stand right now, something has to change. And it has to change like next month. So it's not gonna stop the bleeding, but it can help a little bit if we do a permanent rate increase of something akin to 5%, 6%, something like that. And then introduce the variable rate, but both worlds, but not 19% right out of the gate. What do we think?
That could, the budget committee could certainly do that by the end of next fiscal year, though. In order to keep the sewer fund at the $70,000 level that's in here, we would need to ensure this update is at a level that would result in that.
And let me just ask, so if we did entertain a 5% increase and then, the 19% may not be needed, it may be 14%, something along those lines. So it's not just, just multiplying continuously, but it's a planned approach to ensure that, again, we're not bleeding as much.
Yeah.
And we're trying to capture earlier than later. I would be supportive of something like that.
Nah, onto that as well.
Absolutely.
So, if, let's say 4 months, let's say 6 months, let's say 8 months, that puts our target for this variable rate pretty far out, then are we setting our own course to getting us deeper in a hole until that's unveiled? You know what I mean? So, like, we could enact the 19% tomorrow, but if we're 8 months out, 6 months out from a variable, is that a realistic option for this year? Or is it more to your point, something for next year and then we do a partial? And then I think I'm just repeating something where I said that.
Dig a deeper hole.
Change it. The sewer fund is projected to have a balance as of June 30th of $72,000. That is very low for the sewer fund. And the 19% just keeps it flat. There's a $948 surplus. My concern would be is if we get to like 4, 5, 6 months before we do an overhaul, or we start to have cash flow issues in that fund.
All right, I'm gonna retract all my previous thoughts of support. All right,
Of the variable rate?
of the 5%,
No, that's totally fine. I was just curious, man,
absolutely.
is that, if the variable rates 4 to 6 to 8 months out from being enacted, I mean, that's creating its own cash flow issue, right? So is the 19% really the only viable option?
Is it really the only viable option? Is that?
Yeah, because if you're saying that we're gonna have a cash crunch 6 to 8 months from now in that fund, hypothetically. And this variable rate 6 to 8 months from being able to be enacted, are we gonna be coming down to the wire on enacting this variable fund? It's really complex to make. And are we creating a negative outcome for ourselves trying to pursue that route instead of looking at that long term, but then doing the 19% to make sure that we're at least staying level?
That's my recommendation, to do the 19% to stay level. And then as we're trying to keep the sewer fund solvent, completely restructure the rate so that it's more equitable across customer classes and usage.
Cool. So this isn't an either one.
All right, so we reviewed rates. We asked generally, what would this look like for the average household dwelling unit in Dayton? We came up with a rough number. Do we need further discussion, or let's go ahead and I'll either entertain a motion for like the whole thing, or if we need to separate and do line item for public safety, stormwater, water and sewer.
Can I make a motion? I'd like to move that we approve the fees. The public safety fee as stated, $625 average. Stormwater fee, $232 average. Sewer increase of 19%, which is average $13.65, and water increase of $3.21.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All those in favor and City Recorder, if you could do a roll call, please.
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes,
Counselor Tycro,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire,
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on along. Dayton Village is still. I am seeking clarification tonight from the Budget Committee on programming these sales proceeds for a City Hall project. My proposal is to use these proceeds first to hire an architect to develop plan options and cost estimates. Once we have those in place, we will determine what the financing strategy we need to follow to complete the project. So I'm seeking direction tonight on if we're going to keep that $308,515 as well as the grant monies as presented in the line item budget.
Counselor McGuire?
A point of order. I'm curious. I don't believe this is the correct forum to have the discussion on this. I think this should be before council, not before the budget committee. Because this is the council deciding what we're gonna do with the proceeds of that sale and how we want to work with the city hall. I don't think this changes anything on the bottom line of the city budget, so I believe that this is actually the incorrect venue and this should be being discussed in a city council meeting.
All right, thank you for your comments. If you could, City Manager, if you could just maybe respond to that, but I think also just for clarity, how does this fit into the budget specifically and what would that look like?
Yes, let me navigate to the relevant page. Page 114. Under account 760-760-930-000. I have the $308,515 plus the $500,000 put in the building construction account. So we can leave it as is. We can leave it in that account and have discussions at future meetings.
Should we have any refinement of the language on how this actually just addresses the budget? So this body would not be approving that actual action, but just how it's placed within the budget?
Correct. So alternatively, we could take that 308,515 and pop it somewhere else in the budget if there was another different project in mind. I am asking, is the budget committee okay with that dollar amount being in that account?
Okay, so you're not asking for this body, which it wouldn't be appropriate for us to say, proceeds which haven't been sold yet, what to do with that? That's a council item.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions on that? Councilor McGuire, are you good?
Yes, we can move on. I believe that is correct. We know where the money is in the budget, but all of these questions using the proceeds to hire an architect, develop plan options, et cetera, that properly belongs before council, not before this committee.
All right, so is anyone interested in making a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to keep the $308,515 from Dayton Village's sale in the building reserve program fund.
There's a motion and a second. City Recorder, if you could do a roll call, please.
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes,
Counselor Tyro,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire,
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, we've gone through all the policy decisions that I listed in the budget message, the areas in which I need direction from you. Now, this is your time to deliberate on what you'd like to add to the budget, what you'd like to refine, what you'd like to take out.
City Councilor Mackin.
need the Lord and city trainings. We need the travel and trainings. We need to be able to get out, talk to other people, bring stuff back. 2 weeks ago, you were talking about ending LOC conferences, among other things. I'm going to ask that we put all of that back in, all of. I mean, I went to the CIS conference, it's available. We need training. I don't know how we can afford it, but it needs to be in there.
All right, so if I'm recalling from the city manager's message, if we are wanting something, we need to find either source of funds to support that, or a wait and see. I mean, any thoughts? I am supportive. I think training is essential. One, because all sorts of stuff is happening and municipal government is not easy. There's so many different facets. So I believe in training for staff. I believe in training for council. But how do we do that? How do we afford it? Maybe it looks like a slight reduction. But at least having some, I think. And that includes, I mean, again, this is for staff and council. That's my thoughts. Councilor Hildebrand.
On this specific topic, I think. Depending on the dollar amount that we're asking, I'm not opposed for it being included for staff, but I think us as council should pay our way. I think if we're cutting from operations, then us as council need to pay our way, if we're gonna go to increase.
Councilor McGuire. I just have to say, this is so bizarre, that I can't see you raising your hands on the screen. So you actually has to raise her hand, and I know her name is not Councilor McGuire. But go ahead, please.
Another way that we could, I'm looking at the city manager's budget message on page 21, and it lists several things that we're changing. We're not going to do a community giving program next year, et cetera. I have a question about the $2,500 contribution to the DCDA. Can I get some info about that?
Let me ask for a clarification before the city manager. Is this in the same topic as Councilor Mackin, or is this an additional topic? Just so I can parse it out.
I don't understand. I'm sorry.
Are you trying to find money?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. City manager.
Bear with me just 1 second. I'm just going through my files, for the letter that they sent me for the request. What's in here? I have a request letter, from DCDA. I believe there was an agreement in the past for the city to contribute $2,500 for their Dayton Friday nights. Here we go. So the letter states, it references resolution 2015-16-12, memorandum of understanding for the Dayton Friday night event series. That contribution to DCDA was cut, and they in the past received $4,000. They'd liked, and that was last received in May 23. They're submitting a $2,500 request to get them, for the city to start contributing again to their Dayton Friday Night series. So that's what that represents, is a request for DCDA for Dayton Friday nights.
Okay. Pardon me, but
Right above that, we have the 4,000 for Dayton Friday night, so it's, in essence, it's listed there twice.
We have page number again.
On page 21 on the city manager's budget, and that page. recommended
Yes.
budget.
Mr. Chair, that was gonna be my continued comment on my topic.
Good.
Ah. You got the answer? Pick up?
$4,000 is for Dayton Friday nights. And a number of years ago, they increased that. It gave them an additional $2,500 to execute administrative duties of the DCDA, including a newsletter that would go out from the DCA to the community and so forth on a quarterly basis. Since then, the city took on the role of doing a quarterly newsletter known as the Ferry Street News. So the DCDA no longer produces that material. So as a suggestion, I would ask the DCDA to find what that $2,500 is used for. Because it's obviously not used for newsletter any longer.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman McGuire.
two things. Number one, I would like to recommend that we do not do the $2,500 contribution this year. The DCDA is more than capable of figuring out ways to fund, and they need to figure out ways to fund their activities. The city is already giving them $4,000, and we are very, very lean. That would be my recommendation there. Also, in the city manager's budget message, on page 23, it talks about receiving a quote to install telemetry at McDougal Wells, and that's $53,928. And he's asking the budget committee to look at that. We just hadn't brought that up yet.
Well, I guess in the spirit of bringing things up, I'll put something else on the table. So, one of the questions that I asked at the first meeting was there any operation or maintenance inspections that we needed to do on the new bridge? We did receive additional backup from the city engineer recommending 20,000. I would say, if it's not the 20,000 now, at least 10,000, put something in the budget. And at a minimum, we at least need a line item for that to sit so that we know this money is for this activity. And that it's always discussed on an annual basis. That would be my recommendation, because that's a major investment of the cities.
So with the 53,928, which fund would that be traded to?
That would be the sewer capital fund.
Okay. And then the inspection, what would that be attributed to?
Deanna, would that be sewer, water capital or water operations?
I would say water capital.
Or is it a split?
Split because you move the sewer and water on both sides of the bridge.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
Jeremy. The McDougal, the 53,928 is water. McDougal, he said sewer.
So I was commenting on the bridge maintenance. So for that would definitely be water capital.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilor McGuire.
so Jeremy, does that mean we have to find another $54,000 somewhere, or is it already baked in? I'm not clear on that.
It's not, that came in after I put my numbers together. We could utilize water fund reserves to pay for it.
That be your recommendation, sir?
Unless you want to look at raising rates to cover the costs more than what they've already been raised.
I think we've raised rates enough for 1 year. That would be my recommendation, is to use reserves, but that is something that was on the list of things we need to check off tonight.
I can do that.
Chair.
Yes,
Out of curiosity, and sorry, Jeremy, out of curiosity, how much do we have in water fund?
Reserve.
I almost said reservoir, wrong, still water, but not the right thing, reserve, out of curiosity. See, we're saving 118,000 from fiscal year 24-25 to fiscal year 25-26, but it just doesn't show.
So the rest, recommended budget, page 38. It has $205,000 in contingency in the water fund.
Gotcha.
So if we don't spend any of that contingency, that appropriation lapses and that constitutes your fund balance. So those are the unspent resources available, the fund balance available.
I have a follow-up question.
Absolutely.
So then if we're pivoting over to the sewer fund as an example, page 39, and I apologize if we've covered this before, I'm going to catch up, just making sure I'm tracking. So if your sewer fund budget is coming in at a deficit of, what was it, 160,000 roughly?
For this fiscal year, I have a $2,700 deficit.
Or 700, I'll put it in my. I yield my time. I won't wait for I'm asking the right questions.
Any other items for discussion on other direction? City manager, do you seek us to make a motion on any of the items that we brought up, or?
No, let me recap it just to make sure I've got everything. So the DCDA $2,500 cut and potentially program that to the council training account. Maintenance for the utility bridge, budget at least 10,000. Fund the McDougal telemetry using reserves. That covered?
Yes.
Sorry, I got one later. So Councilor Wildhunter's not here tonight, but one thing he focused on last time was the lighting for the holidays. So in the Parks Department, under the, Christmas tree and bandstand lighting, I just wanna make sure that this 500 is enough to keep the lights literally on for the holidays, or if we need to allocate more to that, and I'm talking ornament, whole 9 yards. So just out of curiosity, what does this get us?
Team, what do you think?
So we're fine with what we have here for decorating the park. And because it's done by Public Works and myself, there's really no additional cost. The only thing we have to be concerned about is the actual Christmas tree itself. As I mentioned in the last one, the squirrels, things like that. We've had to get an arborist in the past to go up and do the climbing.
Okay.
And it's basically based on an hourly rate, so it just depends upon kind of what happens this year.
Okay.
We could try and take a look at that, as far as turning them on and seeing how it looks right now. But it could deteriorate further, obviously, as it gets closer.
For sure, okay,
So
thank you.
that's, yeah.
Just wanted to make sure it was, taken into account. That's all.
All right, so it sounded like we have consensus on those items. Is anybody gonna wave their hand saying absolutely not? I need to object or provide a comment. Okay, city manager, is that sufficient for you?
I have my margin orders. I'll finalize the line item budget, bring it to you next week for vote.
All right, so that wraps up item D. I believe. City manager, you mentioned that item E is really, we need to save that for the next meeting.
Correct.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to table item E.
I make a motion to table, action item E until the next.
There's a motion and a second, if you could please.
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes.
Counselor Tyra,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. For item F, city manager, you said we could move forward with this motion, which is to approve taxes for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, which is $1.7057 per $1,000 of assessed value for operating in the general fund.
Correct.
All right. So there's a cited motion below. Does somebody want to make a motion? Councilor Hildebrand?
Chair, I move to approve taxes for the 2025-2026 fiscal year at the rate of $1.7057 per $1,000 of assessed value for operating purposes in the general fund.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? Councilor Tishro? The recorder, if you could do a roll call?
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes.
Counselor Tyra,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire.
Yes.
All right, and there's a second item for $1.85 for $1,000 assessed value for operating purposes in the local option tax fund. There's a motion below if somebody wishes to proceed.
Sure. Okay. Chair, I move to approve taxes $1.85 per $1,000 assessed value for operating purposes in the local option tax fund.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? Councilor McGuire? I'm not. Trading places, huh?
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes.
Counselor Tigra,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire.
Yes.
All right, that takes us through this budget committee meeting agenda. Item G is adjourned. We do have a meeting following that. And I don't need a motion. That's what I was told last time, so I'm just gonna hit and we'll move on to the next meeting, which I will adjourn or start, the opposite of adjourn. So this is the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting. Again, it's Monday, May 19th, 2025. It is approximately, I don't know, almost 9 o'clock. And for item A, we called to order. We're going to skip the Pledge of Allegiance because we already did that. For roll call, city recorder, are you sufficient with everyone in the room and online?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we do have a quorum. Item C, appearance of interested citizens. Does anybody wish to speak? Linda? Linda, if you could go ahead and go to the podium.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm speaking to, because I haven't seen an agenda on your urban growth boundary or urban growth. Well, I don't have any questions because I don't know anything about any of that. I came to talk about the budget. And as a citizen of this community, I honestly feel that some of the stuff that was discussed last time in the meeting, I was online listening until you guys adjourned. And one thing that I wanted to say when you had the PERS going up was, I used to work for the school district and I got PERS. I paid into PERS. And I got injured on the job and PERS pays me a disability benefit. And if it wasn't for PERS, it would make it hard for me to live off of Social Security because it gives me extra income. And with all the increases and everything that we've had the last year, well, since 2020, I really feel that if you're wanting to have a sense of community in this community, because I've been here over 40 years, that some of the community activities that we have, like the Christmas in the Park, the Easter egg hunts, all that stuff means a lot to this community. And to hear that we might not fund those things is a little disheartening. The other thing is I heard that, you needed a new city hall. Well, as a citizen of this community, the first thing I think is if we're running out of money, why would we worry about having a new city hall when we have a perfectly good building over here that we put money into, that we own as a city? We really need to utilize that newer building. And to have a new city hall when our budgets are so tight makes no sense why the city would want to try to turn around and build when we have a problem with our water, our sewer, we're raising rates and everything. By the time a person sees all that, they're very discouraged in being a part of the community. And I know our rates are probably a little bit comparable to McMinnville. Lafayette, for some reason, they're able to build a new water retention place, which I don't know how they ended up funding that, but there's things that we have in this community, you know, upgrading roads, upgrading our sewer and water systems. And it's just been put on the back burner and money hasn't been set aside for that kind of stuff. I own property outside in the urban growth boundary, and we spent money here in the city of Dayton to have a meeting on the feasibility of that. And I had my property sold out there and to a developer. And they were looking at 140 homes. Well, when you figure in the water and sewer and the hookups and all of that, and the city is saying it could be 3 to 6 years. I've heard 20 years, I've heard 25. But when I first did the land swap and we spent money paying that to put that forward, and then once you got the land swap done, then the rules changed. And I, as a citizen of Dayton and someone that owns property outside the city of Dayton, when you hear people talking about cutting this or cutting that and raising rates and doing that, it's really disheartening because I feel that I missed out on $5,250,000 because the city wasn't ready to do their annex the urban growth boundary in. So it's really hard for me to see being a resident here and the amount of money that we're shortfalling. It's really disheartening. Because I have read in the newspaper so many times of McMinnville, their budget's short. Lafayette's budget's short, Sheridan, Willamina. And
If you could go ahead and wrap up your
Okay.
comments. Thank you.
and so I just really feel that when you're making these decisions, you're making them for the city residents, people that put you in office. And I really feel that I've heard that you're kicking the can down the road. Well, quit kicking. Start making decisions that are hard to make. And because as a citizen, I am very disappointed. I was on the city council years ago and we made some hard decisions. But anyway, that's my comments on it.
All right, is there anyone online who wishes to make comments?
No.
Okay. Moving on to item D, city manager, discussion of proposed budget.
I have no changes since the last meeting.
Okay. Is there any discussion that the committee wishes to make? All right, let's move on to item E. Motion to approve the 2025-2026 Urban Renewal Agency budget.
Do we push that one too, or do we do that one now?
City manager, great question.
I recommend that the council approve the motion under item E and item F.
Councilor Hildebrand,
Chair, I move to approve the budget of the City of Dayton Urban Renewal Agency for the 2025-2026 fiscal year in the amount of $7,769.
there's a motion to approve. Is there a second? Councilor Mackin. The recorder, if you could roll call.
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes,
Counselor Tegra,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire,
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item F, motion to approve taxes for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. There's a motion below it. Councilor Mackin,
I move to approve tax increment for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by combining the taxes for the Dayton Urban Renewal Agency Plan under section 1C, Article IX out of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457.
there's a motion to approve. Is there a second? Councilor Tishro? All, or not all those in favor, but your city manager or city recorder, can you please do a roll call?
Member Hopper,
Yes.
Chair Holbrook,
Yes.
Co-Chair Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Yes,
Counselor Tegra,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Counselor Peterson,
Yes.
Counselor McGuire,
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item is adjourn. So, before we adjourn, just one reminder, next meeting is May 27th, 2025. So if anyone is interested, get on the website and attend, and otherwise we're adjourned.
Reminder that that is Tuesday night.
That is a Tuesday night because of a holiday. Thank you.
All right, good job, everybody.